Hi everybody, my name is Arlie Moore. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how I made the song that you're listening to right now using only samples from the TildeSounds Sample Bundle and stock Bitwig devices. So yeah, let's get into it. I started out just doing like the drums. So, you know, I started with kick and snare. That's how a lot of things start. So the drums are pretty simple. They don't really have a lot of processing on them, to be honest with you. On the drums group, there's just a saturator, which is adding like 3 decibels. Just makes them a little bit louder and kind of glues them together a little bit. The kick is kind of 2 layers here. So I have this one from Tilde Drums version 5, I think. And then this like metal top bit. Just a little Foley thing to make the kick sound a little more substantial. And then the snare. So this changes a little bit through the song, but for the main part, it sounds like this, which is these different layers. On this one, I wanted a reverb because I wanted that like kind of roomy feel to it. And then this one has a little bit of a transient coming in earlier than the others. And it kind of gives it that like flamming effect that I think is really nice. And that one's just, you know, straight up snare. It's pretty dry sounding, but layered together with that reverby one, it works, I think. And then we have this like little wind up thing and then a reverse. This one is just a cymbal reversed with a chorus on it to like make it wider. And so on every other snare, let me solo that too. It kind of like gives it more movement. And that's something I do a lot is I'll do that. I'll accent the snares, but you want to do them differently. You don't want to do it for every single snare. So I'm doing this one on every other. Oops. And it sort of creates this really cool like push-pull effect in the drums, I think. And so here in the tops group, it looks like a lot, but it's really not. We just kind of got like little bits doing their thing. A little bit of whatever, Foley. Right. That one. And then I have this one every other measure. I think just kind of like accentuates the bass pattern a little bit. It just kind of feeds more into the sort of like call and response thing that's sort of going on. And then for the second half of this first drop, I have this, which is actually a break sample with quite a bit of processing on it. It's not a lot of plugins, but it's like changing the sound a lot. This is what it sounds like before. So I wanted that rhythm, but I wanted it to be more of a hi-hat thing. So, you know, we are high passing it. And then a vocoder, which is doing most of the heavy lifting here, really. And then this is just what comes default on it. You mess with the filters a little bit to get it that like noise feeling. And then, you know, I'm making it really bright. Like that. And I'm just cleaning it up with the dynamics device. It's just a compressor, really. And then an EQ, and then a little bit of a filter, and I believe I am automating that filter. Yes, so the intro here, they're darker. And then building up, they get brighter. And then also leading up, I have this thing. Just kind of like this weird percussive element that is adding to the building tension of the intro. Yeah, so I guess we'll get to the bass in a second, I promise. Here on the second drop, it switches up a little bit. I have this like kick like reversing into it, and the whole thing is getting sidechained, so that reverse still ducks everything, and I think it sounds really cool. wanted this like a donk kind of sound to be accentuated. So there's this other metallic sample here, which has a bit going on for it. Again, turn all this off and go through the processing. That's what it sounds like before. I'm frequency shifting it down, then compressing it like a lot to try and like bring that sustain out really. And then reverb, which is just long, big reverb, making it brighter to like sort of balance with the other snare going on here. And then this, I believe, yeah, I'm just automating the reverb to mute after a certain time. That way it completely is gone by the time the next snare hits. And then I'm just clipping it. That's just, you know, mixing stuff. And then I'm also doing the reverse thing here in this section. And yeah, so that's just alternating with a super metallic snare every other snare hit. All right, so let's get started on the bass here. So it's actually really not that complicated. There's actually like a lot of pops and clicks due to the pretty aggressive OTTing that I have going on, but that kind of gets covered up by all the drums, I think. So these are actually fairly unprocessed, but they're going through this group that does have some shit on it, primarily an OTT. So without the OTT, it's like, this one's kind of loud. That's a gnarly transient right there. But yeah, it's really not that complicated. These are just samples that, you know, I found in the, I believe most of these are from the Shambles pack, and, you know, you're just cutting them up, finding interesting phrases within them to pull out. And if I expand all of my automation here, you can see there's not really any automation on the bass group at all, actually, except for down here, which we'll get to. So yeah, on the bass group, there's this OTT happening. Because these are pretty unprocessed and dark samples to begin with, I feel like. So yeah, I'm really going for this call and response thing. So we're letting the kick hit. And so this leads you in, pulls you into this main like neuro bass thing here. And this just has his EQ on it, because I wanted to pull more of that crunchy like upper mids out. And then we're doing more of that on the group here too. Actually, let me turn those back on. We're ducking here around the 150 to 200 hertz range, because I tend to find that that's where basses get super muddy pretty quickly. And I'm actually doing it again pretty aggressively over here on the next EQ as well. And then I'm low passing it just because the OTT is bringing the highs up quite a lot. And doing that just makes more room for all of the cymbals and effects and whatever the fuck else I got going on, right? So, and the important thing is like finding an anchor, and then finding a main thing, and then building the call and response off of that. So this here is my anchor for this drop. This is the same every single time it hits. And then these responses, that one's the same, and then I cut it up a little bit. Then it's the same again. And then for this last section, it's almost the same. It is a different like edit there, and then I bring in this other one, which kind of transitions into the next version. And then there I'm keeping the same anchor through because it's like a part B to the same drop. But then I have this new bass here, and it kind of just does like this reverse thing. It's just a different variation, and then these are the same as the first one. They're just like duplicated over, right? For melodic parts on this part, I have this, which started as these chords that we hear on the intro. This is that same neuro bass, I think, actually. No, it's a different neuro bass, but it's from the same pack, loaded into a sampler, and it's being played really fucking high pitched. Like you can see this is like the 5th and 6th octave. And then we're EQing it, we're coursing it. This is a filter. I believe this is, yeah. So later in this part of the song, this is a transfer curve that's just like kind of cutting out little bits of the waveform just to make it sound like kind of crunchier and more like broken up sounding. I think it sounds really cool in the context of the drop. But here for the intro as well, there's this LFO movement going on, which goes away during the drop. And then I'm just compressing it, EQing it, and then I have a convolution reverb on it. Just because the reason I chose the convolution reverb is because I'm honestly just really not a fan of the Bitwig reverb, and I got kind of sick of using it. And so yeah, this does have some filter movement on it, I believe. It should be this one. Yeah. So it kind of like pulls you into that bass a little bit after the like super bright lead up going into the drop. And then this part here on the next part of the drop is mostly the same patch. I duplicated it before I did things like the chorus and stuff on it. And it was originally part of the same MIDI, but it was distorting a whole bunch, and I kind of didn't want that, so I just duplicated it and copied these notes over. And this is pretty simple. It's just like, what are those, quarter notes, I think? I guess you could argue they're half notes, but you know, whatever. Just doing the root note, and then it drops down right before, just to give it some interesting variation. And then this is a preset I made a while ago called Shitty Cartridge, and it emulates a shitty cartridge on like a turntable. So it just has two random LFOs modulating a delay on the left and right channels, so they're slightly desyncing from each other, which is also warping the pitch a little bit. So without it, it actually sounds fairly clean. But this adds so much pitch variation, and it also widens the sound a whole lot without completely destroying the center channel, I think. Like, it sounds really fucked up, but I like it. And in the context of the drop, it sounds really cool. Yeah, and so there's this middle part in which I just took those chords from earlier. I think I pitched them up an octave. No, they look about the same. Yeah, they're the same octave. But they're about the same. It's just a filter. And then I'm just like cutting the reverb very intentionally with the mix like this, leading up into the build-up, and then cutting it so it's pretty clean on the drop, so that initial hit it just lets the main sounds through. And so let's talk about these stabs here. These are really interesting, I think. This is something I've noticed in a lot of dubstep I've been into lately, is taking more of an atonal sound that does still have like harmonics to it, and making it this sort of like stabby sound with a more sustained bass underneath it. So that's what we're doing here. This is a percussion loop from one of the sample packs, which sounds pretty fucking lasery right now. This probably has the most processing of anything in the project. So let's just turn all these off and we'll go through them. So this is what it sounded like before. Just has an interesting rhythm, I think. It's not being pitch shifted at all. This is just the raw sample. So we're making it darker. We're saturating it like crazy. Frequency shifting it. And then we're transient shaping again. More dynamics here with the dynamics device. We're taking the lows and bringing them even quieter, which I think can clean up a sound a lot, especially if it's a percussive sound. It's also going to make the sustain less long, sort of. It just sounds like less sloppy to me that way. And then this here is basically a disperser, but kind of shit in the grid. With a disperser, these are typically all tuned to the same frequency. I just turn the knob to like a million random positions, but that's what makes the sound all lasery. Then we're clipping it. And then I wanted it brighter, so I'm doing that. I'm using a dynamics just to bring the quiet parts of the highs up even more, and then clipping them so it doesn't get too obnoxious. It is pretty obnoxious though. And then we have this convolution, which I loaded a glass hit sample from one of the packs, which is adding this cool harmonic to it, this like sort of ringing that I think is really nice. And then there was a frequency that I really wasn't fucking with, so I just like notched it out with the EQ. Kind of sounds like shit on its own, but in the context of the mix, I think it sounds better that way. And then for filter, that is, I believe, yeah, that's mostly just for the pre-drop. So like, and then I'm automating the frequency shifter a little bit to going into the drop, so it starts higher until it hits the drop, where it's like that, right? And then so this piece right here, these are just like Foley glass sounds that I cut up and looped to hit with every hit of the main stab sound, and it just adds this really cool top layer. I think it was really important for me to make sure that it like cuts and fades out with each of these hits, and then also using Control and Alt, you can drag this around and vary up the hits a little bit. And so yeah, I just did that for all of the stabs, and together it sounds like this. And then I'm doing a call and response again with this. And then the bass gets pretty funky here. There's not anything too crazy with these, it's just an interesting pattern. This time I'm using these as my anchors and then letting the other sounds go kind of wild. There's just some EQ on this one, making it less muddy. And then this one, again, making it muddy, really ducking those low mids. It just makes it go into that OTT on the bass group a little bit nicer. Same on this one, it's a filter. It's pretty gnarly going through the OTT without it. This one's just cleaning that one up a little bit. This one doesn't have any processing at all. It's kind of like, that's almost a kick drum. And it kind of sounds like it too, but I think that's sick. And then this one, just another filter. That noise is pretty aggressive going into the OTT, so just putting this on before it hits the OTT makes it a little bit smoother, I think. And the second time, it's almost the same thing, but we're varying it a little bit, putting this little edit here, making this one longer. And then it just goes on for the next drop, and then it swaps this one out. Instead, I switched to doing a more sustained bass. And so for this one, I wanted this bass to follow the percussion, the like stabby things here, right? So when they play together. And the way I did that is it's kind of janky, but if you take an audio receiver, it's going to replace the audio with the incoming channel if you turn the mix all the way up. So I'm taking the audio of the percussion loop, and then I'm using the replacer, which uses transient detection to trigger a MIDI note. So we can see here at the end of this yellow bit's coming out. In Bitwig, that means there's an audio note being sent, or a MIDI note being sent, sorry. And then if you just turn the mix all the way down on the chain, it returns it back to the original audio, but it still lets the MIDI pass through. So if I turn this all the way up, it's just letting the stab through, but turning it off, we get the original bass sound. But now it's triggering the MIDI for each hit of the percussion loop. And so with that, I'm using a tool, and then this is a MIDI triggered envelope. And then I'm just automating the timing on it, which is just speeding up and slowing it down. It's not actually changing the curve really that much. And then it turns off for the second hit of that bass, where it's just like a static, like sustained thing. And then here at the outro, it's just more call and response stuff with just sounds that already existed in the project. I just found the ones that would be interesting to bring over and do it a little bit more sparsely. That way it feels, you know, more like an outro. And then keeping this Foley from the stabs, but not the stabs themselves. That way it still kind of implies that rhythm, but it doesn't have the full like in-your-face stabs sound going on. Cool. And then layered all throughout all of this, I have just this effects group. During the outro and the intro, I have this field recording. which it sounds like they're just walking through a forest. I mean, it's called walking and breathing. And I really like this because it adds like more of an airiness to a less busy part of the song. Like if I turn it on and off, it's very subtle and you can almost not even hear it through speakers, especially if you're in a noisy or an untreated room. But I think it makes a world of difference on things like headphones, where you can really hear the difference in that detail. Even if they're not super like percussive or interesting, it just like fills out the sound more, I think. And then here I have this sort of like ambient ringing thing. I mean, this is pretty simple. It's just like a delay and then compressing it just to bring the sustain up a little bit, filtering, delay, and that's ping pong, and then limiting it. I don't even know if that limiter is doing anything, to be honest with you. And then we have a tool here, which is being muted. I'm just muting it so it stops ringing, because I'm reversing this in the breakdown. And so that's just to mute it, that way the drop comes in super clean. Then I have this falling sound sample, which just comes in every now and then to, like, I don't know, just add some more texture to the drops a little bit. And then here, these are just being used as risers. It's just a filter and some increased gain on this one. It's not super complicated. And then I'm just, same thing all the way throughout. There's this one too. Just, you know, basic effect stuff. So the way that I'm sidechaining in this is using something that I built in the Bitwig grid. And this is a technique that I've seen from TildeSounds. You send the things you want to trigger the sidechain to a sidechain send. And then you want to set the output to no output. That way it doesn't output to the master. And then everything you want to be sidechained, you want to send into a sidechain group. And then this is a plugin I have that's like akin to the Cable Guys Kickstart 2 plugin. Basically, all you do is you take an audio input, which is the sidechain send, and it takes that, it makes a MIDI trigger out of it, which triggers the sidechain curve, and then you can draw your curve and you can set your timing. It's not my favorite way to sidechain, but it is Bitwig stock. I would much prefer just using the Kickstart plugin, but hey, this shit's free. It's not that hard. You know, there's a million tutorials out there for building your own ducking. There's probably a preset in Bitwig for that, to be honest with you. Oh yeah, also with the FX, I set the output to that sidechain master. That way visually it's in a different group. It's easier to organize in the project, but it is still getting sidechained by the main kick and snare. You can listen to the full song now on SoundCloud and soon on streaming under the name Arlie Moore. The link will be in the description down below. Please check out the TildeSounds Sample Pack Bundle if you enjoyed the sounds in this and you want to try them yourself. I hope this was an interesting video for you guys, and I will see you guys next time.